Okay, good afternoon. Call the meeting to order here. It is 2:02 on the clock. One item on the agenda, so item 3.1, 2025 operating and capital budgets. I'll pass it off to administration.
And Mr. Reeve and members of council will be, we want to suggest to you when we get into the slides, an order of working our way through the day. And through that, we've been very mindful that we've got our expanded management group here today, so we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So when we get to that slide, I'll talk about an order of working us through the process, and then we'll have through that some additional information to share with council relative to some financing options on the budget, et cetera. But if we beg your indulgence, if we could do that, we would really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, following up to our last meeting on November 25th, Council shared with us some requests to go back with and make some changes to our capital program. So we have made some adjustments and we have put forth some changes, and as Paul just shared, that we have some options overall for helping finance the budget. I'll quickly highlight on the slides and then we'll go into our operations sections. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. We didn't adopt the agenda. Should we do that?
There's one item on the agenda.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Just checking.
And then we'll come back into the deeper discussions of capital budget, if that's, just a highlight of the changes that we made from the last budget. The airport project was removed from the budget. The new capital projects were reduced to $4.9 million. Currently, the budget is fully funded based on the reserve as the revenues as budget. So we remove the use of extra cash from our surplus. Where applicable, we made some changes to the operational budget. So the numbers that we had shown previously for expenses have adjusted based on that. And we included an estimated $400K additional revenue from taxation based on the end of a tax holiday. So those are the major changes, and we'll flip through the capital into the operation, as I said, and we'll come back. So just a quick overall highlight. So the budget includes the operation tax revenue of $32 million, which is a 6.3% increase over the 2024 actuals. And we're using the assessment values that we have as of November 13th with any appropriate adjustments. So for example, one of the adjustment would be that tax relief that wasn't in that assessment. Our expenditures increased about $3 million. So that's $2.9 million compared to the budget that we had last year. And $1.8 million of that is attributed to the new initiatives. And we will get into details on the new initiatives later. And we'll come back to capital. Here we're highlighting some of the increase, decrease overall in the budget. These will be itemized in greater details as we go through the departments where the impacts are. Overall, we're estimating a decrease in our interest revenue because of the lowering of the interest rates that is happening. Overall, our total revenue increased. In the total revenue, we have also included a approximate $700K for the DRP. We are working with a contractor this year who is organizing and getting all the documents out to the government faster. So we believe that was a conservative amount to estimate that we would get into additional revenue this year. Our contract services have gone up some. We have additional engineering and just some general contracting coming out of the initiatives for next year, and we'll get, I said in details in that. We have increase in goods and material. This is mostly driven by the actual work that we're doing in our infrastructure and in some of our other program areas, and we'll get into those into the details. The same thing with supplies is also driven by the increased work that we've done. Like, for example, this year we know we did a lot of work in the infrastructure on roads, so those materials, getting gravel and all of those are into those costs, for example. The salary increased $1.2 million overall. A majority of that has to do with the new initiatives, which we will see a little bit later. And office equipment, minor assets also increase. There are amounts in there for the new initiatives. We have amounts in that number for new council equipment and the general replacement and aging of our office tools, and also small tools that our infrastructure and our other teams are using. So those, okay. And our CAO will go from here and
You just want to touch on some refinements to the agenda to address primarily operating today and finishing later with capital. But as a starting point, I want to review with council the pillars of a sustainable community. So we're focused on overall corporately where we need to be. And then we'll do an overview of the operating budget with the staffing, the new initiatives. I'll present those at a high level. And then the departments will go through their departmental operating budget presentations. And in our discussions and preparing this, we would appreciate your patience of having a functional area finish their presentation before questions, because we find at times there are questions that are answered through the presentation. So as each functional area, if you could note your questions, and then we would come back and do our best to answer those. And then after we've gone through the operating, and we went through capital the other day, and as has been reported by Denisha, it's been adjusted. So then you'll have the overall picture between the capital and the operating. So we want to then discuss with you some financing options that are available. And then we'd come back and go through the capital budget adjustments. If that's workable for council, we can kind of organize our day in that order to make it efficient for everybody.
okay.
Questions?
Through the chair to administration, just I want to clarify for me, I guess, the holding the questions could be asked at the end of, so a staff member explains the budget and then we could ask a question at the end of that.
Right. So for example, as we go through a section, I'll use one I'll be presenting, legislative services.
Sure.
So when we hit the end of that, then you know, hit your question while they're still fresh in your mind, but hopefully we've answered most of your questions through our presentation.
Gotcha.
And of course, this budget package is different with the work that has been done on service levels. So it gives you that overall picture of all the services that we are responsible to provide. So as you know, we put in abeyance refining them further because of budget and other pressures, but it's a very good starting point of painting that picture of all the things that we're responsible for corporately, and we're counting on all of our human resources to deliver all those services, because it's our dedicated people that get things done to serve this community. Okay, we'll go. The overall, in terms of sustainability pillars, and I want to address this to an extent because of some of the challenges that Woodlands has dealt with. And of course, the number one issue that you had to deal with was operational funding and funded reserves, because the county was having to go to the bank during the year to borrow on a line of credit to fund the providing of services and programs to the community during that negative cash flow. And that's before the bulk of the taxation money comes in. It's smoothed out some because we've got a number of our ratepayers that are on the balanced monthly payment, those tend to be quite popular. So there was a lot of focus there, and that's an area that's a success because we've got cash in the bank. Our reserves are not on paper without being funded. The reserves are fully funded. So when we talk to you about the reserves, we've now got the cash to max those up. So that's been a success of the trials and tribulations and the cuts of the last 5 years. So that's very positive. The next two areas that I want to just touch upon have been impacted by those cutbacks and staffing reductions and cutbacks of maintenance is having functional and reliable infrastructure. And council, of course, knows through the reports that have been presented to you over recent months on our major infrastructure categories, through Jeff and his team, that we've got a number of areas where our infrastructure is at the critical need or almost reaching the failure area. So again, that was to help provide the full picture for council so that you had a comprehensive understanding. And then the other part is the organizational capacity to deliver council-approved services and programs, and that's where we're really feeling some real pressures to meet the full menu of services that we provide. So we want to give you that sense. But I'd suggest to you that really those are the three pillars. If you draw an analogy to the secure three-legged stool, those would be the pillars that you have to have in place. The focus, for obvious reasons, had to be on the one, returning some cash to the bank, and that's been successful. But we've got, as a result of that, we've got additional work to do on the infrastructure and the organizational capacity and organizational wellness pillars. So I'd certainly encourage that as we're working our way through the budget that we're mindful of those three critical pillars to be sustainable and successful. So starting off with, we know from the feedback from our ratepayers, from you as elected officials being a critical liaison link with us. We know from our service tracker that there are still concerns in the community with road quality and the condition of the roads. Now, as council knows, and we appreciate your support, we tried a lot of different things, did a lot of new initiatives to improve the roads. We got back into reworking subdivision roads and getting them improved. So there will be a continued focus on the roads because it's improved and it shows some positive from the service tracker. We know that there are still concerns. So this budget has continued to place priority on road upgrades, and we'll get into the details later, but the highlights are calcium stabilization to try to take the washboarding out of some of the areas, the continued reconstruction of the roads within the subdivisions, and of course, some of the roads are impacted with poor drainage or ditches or plugged culverts. So there's a continued focus on really improving our roads. The next area of infrastructure in recent years has not been a high level of focus in terms of the investments, and it's showing the impact. So we have got leaking water service repairs. We've got some hydrants and water mains that need to be replaced. We've got manhole repairs, some sewer line replacement, and we've got some control systems that are band-aided together. And even today, we're dealing with an issue with a well in one of our hamlets. So there are the initiatives that remained in the capital budget in that area of the utilities are really to address the most critical needs, or we've got some of them where they're ranked from an asset management, and we appreciate your support of evaluating our assets. They are really at the stage of failure, and we need to make some further investments. The other important areas as well, just gotta find my place here. From the fiscal recovery, we've talked about the operational cash flows, so we have the money, we've got funded reserves. The next area we want to talk about is economic development initiatives. And Woodlands County has some continuing challenges relative to income and the amount of revenue we have to serve our community. So there is a focus in this budget of really on economic development. And some of the initiatives under economic development are to elevate Woodland's profile, provide site selection tools, and of course, the benefits are expanded tax base and employment generation. And council will recall from your most recent meeting, leveraging provincial funding through the NRED application. So really that's looking at trying to expand our revenue streams by being successful of attracting, and that also takes some pressure off our existing taxpayers as well to meet the costs of financing our operations. And then this very critical part, investing in human resources and capacity. And we need to stabilize our service levels, rationalize workloads, avoid further staff burnout, and enhance our health and safety programs. So that's another area that's really important to focus. And there's been a lot of, and it speaks to the dedication of your workforce, that they've carried the ball over the last 5 years, but it's been at a price and they need some additional assistance to be sustainable. So we really need to stress that it needs to be this holistic three-pillar approach to really position the organization well. Are there any questions on any of that?
No, nothing yet, sir.
Okay, if we will flip past the capital, because we'll come back to that, and then we'll start working our way through the we'll hit the highlights and then start working our way through the operational areas. So then if you could get to the new initiative slide, please. I believe. Can't see that. No, I've got it here. So we want to give you an overview of the positions that have been identified. And we took the same approach that we did with the infrastructure condition assessments and really conveying to council information on where we're at as an organization and where we have to be. We realize that there may have to be some phasing of these staffing asks, et cetera, but we certainly wanted to give you a real good understanding of where we're at. And all the requests in here are certainly well justified, given the experience that we are having as an organization. So the first one listed there is the administrative assistant. And the intention of this position is we've got an administrative assistant now that is split between protective services and economic development. And the demands are very many. We've got needs that are being met on both sides from a protective service and the economic development as well. Now, we also are in a situation where there's a substantial amount of overtime being put in by the individual. And just to give you a sense of that, between the two areas in 6 months, there was about 100 hours overtime. So when you take it a full year, that's 200 hours of overtime, and we're still not meeting all of the needs. But that is a substantial impact on the individual in terms of their work-life balance and their wellness. And the difficulty that you have where you don't have an adequate level of that administrative support is you're drawing other people into doing that type of work at the expense of meeting some other needs. So that is that certainly is challenging. Now, in terms of the service levels that are important through the fire departments, of course, there's a lot of training, budget tracking, and there's a lot of day-to-day tasks and with providing customer services, responses, and communications, and certainly from the economic development side, the volume of the inquiries from an economic development perspective and following up those, and then working where you're involved with the community. So there's a lot of those areas where the support of the administrative assistant is absolutely critical to our success, and we've got some real gaps there. The next one that I will that's on the list was a heavy-duty mechanic, and we've done an analysis and looked at the amount of work that we are shipping out. And the work that we're shipping out to other shops is in the neighborhood of $500,000. Now, some of that, in fairness, is specialized work that we could not do. But in us looking at it, there's probably in the neighborhood of, looks like about $250,000 of work that we could do. This is one of those positions. Some of the other, we required some investments in capital, for example, the mowing. This, we're fortunate. We've got a good shop, we've got some space, so there won't be a lot of other costs, really some specialty tools and maybe some IT support. So, and we've looked at a typical invoice and said if we did this internally, the repair shops mark up parts too. We can buy parts through Canoe at a discount, and also doing our own work. So we're confident there would be about a 30% differential and about $250,000 work. So that's a substantive saving to our community. But the other advantage is shops are busy. So when you have a breakdown, you're not getting at the front of the door in the morning. So it also, we can do some work with hours to have mechanic service available, expanded hours to keep our fleet running, because although we're improving with the replacement of some equipment, we still got some older units that we're trying to band-aid together until we can replace them. So this is a matter of saving some money and providing an increased level of service to keep our operations going. So that's why this has been proposed. The next position on the list is building management coordinator. And the challenges that we've got, of course, is that we've not had resources in that area. So you end up, when there's not proactive managing of the condition of our facilities, you end up having failures, and that can be with HVAC unit or other things that need to be looked at and coordinated. So it's expensive when things are not caught at the preventative level, when we're at the point where there are failures. So you pay a premium when you're calling out companies to help you out on an emergency basis. There are many times where you pay the premium. So that overall, looking at building maintenance, looking at the condition of our facilities, planning maintenance, and coordinating all of that work are some of the areas that we require some additional assistance. Now, as the departments go through, they'll highlight further, and they can give you, if you require a more detailed explanation. I'm just trying to give you an overview and what is driving the needs. The next one on the list is manager of environmental services, and we have, by provincial regulation, which is a good thing, we require certified utility operators to safely operate, particularly focus on safe potable drinking water. And we have only 2 licensed operators, so if someone is away and somebody gets ill, we're really, we're right to the wire. And of course, those utility systems, if we have a failure with them, that's one of those areas where it's 24/7. If something goes wrong, you've got to have people available to get the system up and running again. And today, one of our problems with a well in a hamlet, it's all hands on deck trying to deal with that. So it's created a lot of challenges, being that fine-tuned staff and the position really being spread out between other parts of the organization. And I touched in my opening comments that we've got an awful lot of repairs to our infrastructure that have to be occurring in that area. So some additional resources are really critical to share that up and meet the workload. And this is another example of, we've got one of our staff members putting unpaid overtime in at the rate of, that's recorded 15 hours a month. And we know the individual's not recording everything. So again, we're really leaning on staff, and it shows up in the extra hours of work that are required. The next one on the list is capital project coordinator. And I'll just refer back to earlier this year when, well, I'll speak the time when Jeff and the interim CEOs joined the organization. For your capital program, there were not plans in place, there were not tender packages in place, and it makes it difficult when you're halfway through the construction season to get to the point where you're starting to try to deliver those projects. You can also run into challenges then finding contractors, and usually their pricing is less favorable if they've got quite a bit of work already. So this would really, where we've talked to council about changing the method of delivering capital projects, this would be getting more out in front of them with the designs, the plans, and getting the tender packages out earlier in the year, or where there are opportunities to align with a provincial paving project or other projects of that nature, where we see opportunities to save money and be more cost effective. And the other factor here, of course, is that every so often you get grant announcements with looking for shovel-ready projects. And if you don't have shovel-ready projects, you're out before you apply. So it's really trying to be more out in front of planning, delivery of those capital projects, and being positioned to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. The next area is really two important areas dealing with community programming or recreation coordinator. And really our situation has been, since the reductions, that the department really doesn't exist much beyond some maintenance and grass cutting of some of those recreational areas. But in terms of the programming and the programming that can be offered to the community, there's very little. And simply we've got one person, and some of you sit on the committees that give advice, and they've been recommending as well for the community that there be increased programming. So just some of the areas that need to be addressed under the recreation coordinator, or the review and renewal of the recreational leases. And you're more familiar with these than I am, but examples are Hard Luck Canyon and Blue Ridge Recreation Area. There may be others that you are aware of. And the issue of evaluating recreation sites for potential extra maintenance, expansion, and upgrades and additions. And I think it's the Blue Ridge one where, it looks like there could be a possibility, but really analyzing that and looking after that. The 2017 Recreation Master Plan and the 2023 Recreation Survey, and build a strategy based on the results. There's limited capacity to do anything with that at all. Looking ahead and planning for future budgets. Coordination with the Government of Alberta, the Blue Ridge Recreation Area, and Centre for Alberta Projects. There's some opportunities to pursue expansions and some provincial assistance. The issue of fostering, rebuilding external and internal stakeholder relationships. And that's such a big area whenever you talk about community services, is that relationship building. The Recreation Master Plan, done in 2017, is held in abatement. And, there just isn't the opportunity or the resources in the organization to be acting on the recommendations coming out of that. And, of course, recreation sites and programs play a large part in lifestyle and the wellness of our citizens, if there are programs they can take advantage of. And the Community Services Committee, I touched on that. Some of you are aware of these discussions through your active involvement in that committee. And regional collaboration and tourism, there's rebuilding the provincial working relationship. At one point, the county had a very strong working relationship, and now it's to a lesser extent because of lack of resources. So the other side of this is programming services, which would be the program coordinator. And understand formally it was a position called community liaison and program coordinator. And again, there was a social needs assessment, fairly recent in 2023, demonstrated the need to community for increased programming capacity building. And these programs have the potential for training of community groups to make them more self-sufficient, board development, volunteerism, and not-for-profit management. and some fun activities with individuals in the community that are feeling isolated, a little bit removed. Activities bring them out and get them involved in community life. So right now, we have very limited programming and workshops to build capacity because they're not the resources, and it's really falls very much on Heather, and only one person can do so much. So there's other events during Year Park and Recreation Month activities across the province, and of course other summer solstice and school breaks where you can quite often offer programming and opportunities for youth or others. And we would work with the community groups to figure out the best focus, because again, it's building liaison with the community, but really having the ability and the resources to work with those community groups and create synergies with them. So these positions are required if we're going to really reinstate that area of our organization, because really now it's some minimal maintenance. The next one, it would be a reclassification. If we're bringing that back and changing those service levels of an internal staff member, there'd be a reclassification. The next one on here listed is legislative services, and that's really a combination because we've got legislative services and communications and IT all grouped together. And of course, the IT support is very important. There's always increased demands there. There's IT security, cyber attacks, and other IT threats. So security of the system is very important. Some of the other real drivers of work in that area, of course, is 2025, there are municipal elections. And we know that through Bill 20 amendments that there are substantively more demands on municipal authorities and regulations in terms of how we can conduct municipal elections and what we need to do to be adherent with the provincial legislation. The other aspect of this, of course, as well, is the corporate communications plan, and that's been held in abeyance. And there are also some important opportunities coming up where increased public engagement should be considered. And next year, hopefully there'll be work starting on the 5-year fiscal plan. Following the elections and based on our corporate planning cycle in late Q1 or early Q2 in 2026, there should be a refresh and a review of the corporate strategic plan. And of course, that's another excellent opportunity to engage with the citizens. And of course, there's the issue of, as you work through your strategic plan, reporting the results back to the community. So all of that takes communications and takes resources, and we're just absolutely finding that the resourcing in that area is not adequate. The other next one on our list is 2 seasonal staff, and the intention of the seasonal staff is to support our asset management. And of course, we're bringing in new asset management software, which we really appreciate council supporting, but you have to capture the condition assessments, the data. You need to be going out there on a regular basis and reassessing and capturing all that information so it can be loaded in the system. And of course, a lot of that work is best during I'll call it sort of the summer extended construction season. So that's why the approach is recommended that they be 2 seasonal positions that would help capturing this asset management and asset data. And we've got a certain level of information, but there's other areas where all of that information needs to be updated and captured. So that's why there's needs, and that's what's driving the needs in that area. So I'm sure you may have some questions. I was trying to just present sort of an overview of where we're at and where we've got pressures, and we need some reinvestment in our human resources. And as the departments go through, you could ask more detailed questions. But again, we want to give you that global overall perspective to have in the back of your mind as you're considering all of the operational budget. And we know there may have to be some phasing, and we can talk about that as we get to that discussion around financing the budget. But we definitely need to We need to make some substantive progress in this area. We can't have this on hold and none of these positions funded, because I just can't stress enough to you, as some new eyes coming into the organization, these are very legitimate requests. We've had people managing a lot for a substantive period of time. So, we do need to make some progress in reinvesting our human resources. And I know you've indicated to us that we've been reporting this to you. We appreciate you being receptive, but it's budget time now and we have to be making those determinations. So we'll have some options for you, but we definitely need to be moving on some of these positions. Okay, with there's just the next area, if we go to the next slide, is a summation of some of the new initiatives that are in the budget. So we're really trying to assist you to understand what has stayed the same and what is new. So instead of you having to go through the budget in that level of detail, we wanted to share with you what some of these new initiatives are, and of course that will help inform your review of the budget. So the first item up here is equipment, items, hardware, vehicles. So that list really captured, we wanted to present the full picture to you. So some of the positions you require a vehicle, IT, or some other things. So that's capturing all that. So it's all costs in. We're not coming to you after the fact and go, oh yeah, now there's costs of. Now this will change because we moved some things around. For example, there's been, and when we get to the capital, we'll talk to you. We took a real careful look at this pickup question and redeploying half tons and all of it. So not everything here would be required. So depending on what we do with capital and some of the positions, this number will shift some. The second item on here is programming cost, and this is those two positions that I talked to you about where we'd be rebuilding that area, etc. There needs to be some funding for programming. It can be things, examples, facility rental, supplies, advertising, and sometimes it's hiring an instructor. So if you're teaching some fitness class, you need somebody properly trained so people don't get injured. And advertising and promoting. So that's linked to those positions. The fire services review, my understanding is it's been a number of years since there has been a review, and that's really looking at, on a holistic basis, the method of fire service delivery across the county and determining what recommendations there could be to enhance, streamline, or in some cases improve the operation. The increased health and safety training, we continue to have a significant focus on health and safety and really making sure that we meet our employer obligations and with a focus on reducing incidences. Ergonomic program, where of course there are more and more issues over time. Quite often it can be people working in offices, slumped over computer screens. So there was things we can do to eliminate concerns, help improve the safety culture and give leadership an opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to safety, really being proactive. And then the health and wellness, where you move the program to the next level, where you're encouraging healthy living and active lifestyles, because it helps the individual in their personal life as well as reduces absenteeism in the workplace. And we will next year be having an external core audit, and of course there are increased requirements, and we absolutely have to reach 80% overall to continue to be certified. And I don't think 80% is good enough. We need to be well beyond that. So those would be enhancements to strengthen that program and really be looking at protecting and the wellness of our work family. The airport master plan, done properly, airports can be an economic driver, and there's a certain level of development at the airport, and this is really stepping back and looking at all of that and determining the best way to coordinate land uses that protect the operation of the airport and also facilitate other developments around the airport. And the economic development and advertising promotion, we talked about the focuses in that area, and they can tell you more details when we get there, but some of the promotion advertising would be EDA, Invest Alberta Guide, Remote Worker Attraction Company, and Investment Attraction Advertising. So it would allow some broader exposure for the county through those initiatives. The Strategic Investment Traction, Business Expansion, of course, that was the grant application and trying to leverage the provincial funding in terms of that grant application to raise the profile and help our efforts to attract additional companies to Woodlands. The firefighting, I'm not going to touch on each one of those, but council will recall when Sheldon was in presenting an update earlier in the year, we'd pointed out to you things like bunker gear and some of the equipment that needs to be replaced that regularly wears out, that we needed to make some reinvestments in that area to support our volunteer and our firefighting capabilities, and Sheldon gave those details. But that area was unfortunately an area of higher cost consequences with inflation, and the adjustments of the budget were not keeping pace. So really trying to rectify and correct the support we're providing and the condition of our fire halls and everything that's involved with that. I'll just jump down then to engineering contract services, new environmental regs. And as we rewrite and redo the land use bylaw, that's looking at things like slope stability, flooding, and some of the standards you have to have quality development and avoid in a proactive way future problems. And the next one, increased sponsorship, that relates to economic development. And there are the EDO and community marketing, the Chamber Tourism Initiative, Grow Your Business, and some increased costs for some of the Chamber events. And there's one additional one here that was identified to me this morning, number 13, Indigenous Pathways Friendship Center. So there's been an initiative identified there. So when we're in the economic development area of the budget, I understand there's a desire to discuss that partnership opportunity. So that's at a very high level review of some of the new initiatives that are in the budget, and the departments can give you more detail, but we wanted to give you that overview. Can we start going through the operational areas now, Mr. Reeve and council members? Is that okay?
Yeah, can I ask you a quick question on whatever while we're here before we get moving on? When we're talking to the community programmer, and I understand we had the needs assessment, we had that done, but part of that needs assessment last year, we identified that yes, we needed more programming, and instead of us running the extra programming out of the municipality, we offered the funding to the library board, which is providing extra programming, and they're handling all of that out of Blue Ridge and Fort Assiniboine currently. And again, the example where you brought out about like fitness, whatever, or stuff like that for the outside, I know a lot of the halls currently are running those programs on their own with members, and they're giving them basically cheap rates for rentals for programmers to be able to do that, be able to offer those to the programming. So I'm just curious, like we have, sorry, I forget what the community programmer is, $112,000, but realistically a lot of, and I'm not saying that we don't need it, but a lot of that is currently being handled by outside parties outside of the office. So some of these here, I don't know if we fully need, and I know we haven't got there also, but you're talking about an airport master plan on here for $100,000. We just did one of those. So what is the need of redoing it? Because I think that was about 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah. So what I would ask, I mean, those are very, very good questions. So as we get into those areas, as we're in the planning area, and as we're in the community services area, they will know now to be, as part of the explanations, to be answering those questions. So that's the absolute, as we're going through the operational areas, those are the types of questions we want, so we can explain the approach that's envisioned, and we're in this together to try to find the best approach and provide the best services we can and being cost effective while we're doing it. So we'll do our best to answer questions. So those are great. If we hold those till we go through the areas.
Councillor, I'll let you, and then I guess we'll go to the departments. We can.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair to administration, specifically for Paul, you just gave us an overview of the new initiatives, and at one point you used the term phasing. And so from a macro level, I just want to make sure that phasing concept is a possibility as we work through these.
Yes, we'll address that when we talk about your options to finance the budget. So there are some phasing options. Now, I still want to caveat that we need to be moving forward with a reasonable number of these, minimally. And so when we get to that, how we finance it, we've got some options that we can discuss with you. I think will be point on to what you're asking.
Okay, thank you.
So whenever you're ready there, Mr. Benedetto, we'll continue.
Okay, well, we will, just to give an understanding, and this is, again, some supporting information for this important staffing issue. And so prior to the adjustments that had to be made in 2019 to facilitate fiscal recovery, there were 59 positions. And at this point, we've got 57 positions, and of course, as you know, we've also been hit with medical leaves and et cetera. So, we're below that because we've got positions that are vacant. Now, in that 5 years too, there's substantively increased demands. And, I used the most recent example of Bill 20 and what we have to do to conduct elections. And the regulatory requirements for running our utility systems, they're just increased demands to be able to meet that. So that's why we need to take a very critical look at our staffing. And, I can say that we've looked at some other counties that we believe are somewhat comparable. I mean, it's never an exacting science, but there's nothing that I can find that indicates that we are anything but really understaffed with all the comparators that I look at. So we just ask you to bear that in mind as we have our discussions.
Thanks, through the chair. Just another point of clarification, I guess. Within the 2024 FTE positions of 57, we're well aware that some of those positions are not full because of, as you say, medical leave. How many of those positions are not full because we couldn't find a qualified applicant?
I would say that in some of the competitions, it's taken more time where we've had to go back out and at times re-advertise because we were not satisfied with the caliber of the candidates in the pool. At this point, I believe, although it took in some cases re-advertising, going at it again, at this point, we've been able to fill those positions. But sometimes it does take longer because of having to re-advertise or maybe change the position description to attract a different level of candidate. So it is a challenge. At this point this year, it's not stopped us from filling a position, but there's been some challenges getting there sometimes.
So they're all full except for medical leave then?
Well, we've got one position now that they're at the final stages of filling one of the positions. We're just going through the process with a few more equipment operators, and we're getting close.
Okay.
Now, if we go to the legislative services, I'm driving me crazy here.
Paul, I can speak highlight for legislative services.
Yeah, if you just want to ditch the financial numbers, then I'll talk about the services, if you just want to touch on the data that's there.
Okay, very well. So, for legislative services, we have highlighted on screen just a summary of the departments, which is, in summary. So for the 2022-2025 fiscal plan, council has adopted financial understanding, infrastructure, asset management, regional collaboration, strategic economic development, tourism, and organizational excellence as the 5 things that we are to be working towards. And when we flipped to our 2 slides over, we can see some of the 2025 priorities that are in line with that. Coordinating the municipal election is certainly something that is a forefront for 2025, and facilitating the municipal census, the communicating public information out to the public, developing the economic development strategies, and of course supporting our new CAOs will be key there. On a summary level, the total for legislative services, the total operating budget for 2025 is $822K in total. That is made up partly of the budget for regular council, which is $787K, and the budget for election. So some of the areas that we're seeing changes in the overall budget, as I highlighted before, we're seeing changes in the equipment costs for the new council, the election costs. The census, we did not do it this year, so that money is going forward and being done next year. And we have 10,000K there for community partnership and engagement. So overall, the budget increased 4%, or you can say 4.4%. So on an overall level, that's the budget. It does increase, all the salary areas have a 3% for COLA, and so council also has a 3% for COLA here also. Are there any questions in overall general?
One question overall, we've had a discussion on staffing and an individual rolling into ledge services. Does that reflect in this budget on this 812? Or sorry, 822 or?
So, right, so like a personal salary into ledge services?
I just wonder if that individual's wages are also captured.
No,
in
so
this.
the only thing that is currently in legislative is the stuff that are pertaining to council. So all wages for you could say other departmental staff are coded to general operations. Yeah.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to administration, I just looking at one of the line items that kind of popped out to me for the new council coming up. I see we got $28,000 earmarked for services for the new council. Like the ones that we have here didn't equal $28,000, did they?
I don't know what was the budget at the time, because that was 4 years ago and a little bit of a pre-COVID time. So right now, it's about $4,000 to get a new machine. Like one of
These are $4,000?
like
Plus
roughly.
accessories.
Plus, yeah, so plus everything, yeah.
So the keyboards are a separate price, the docking stations are a separate price.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So,
and it's just a rough number.
and that's just a rough,
It'll be 4,000 total.
yeah.
I can't say it'd be 4,000 each.
No, it's
Yeah.
$28,000 total for all of us.
Yeah.
Again, that $28,000, is that also, because I know we had like an onboarding at the beginning and a strat plan session and stuff in our first little bit as we developed, but I guess kind of.
Right, so no, so all of that is coded based on past practice, so I continued it in this budget. It's coded under general operations, so that's in the you could say corporate services budget.
Any other questions from council?
Are there any questions on the service levels of that area? They're described for legislative services in page 218 of your package. For communications, 148. Are there any questions around the service levels? Because certainly, as you know, the one you're familiar with is, of course, the council support, looking at the bylaws and the policies, and of course, you know we've got work to do in that area. FOIP, looking at contracts, agreements, elections, and census, and supporting the committees. And of course, the communications is the reaching out to the community and disseminating information from the organization. And the other initiative that's been held in abeyance is the communications plan because of our resourcing. And of course, there's demands as IT. So that's why that area, we've identified an additional position. The takeaway from that area is that your budget last year had included funding for an assistant CAO, and that has been removed. And so this is putting a position in to support that area, but the assistant CAO has been removed, et cetera. So that's why there's staffing pressures in this area.
Any other questions from council?
Okay, so we'll move on to corporate services, and I do have two members of my team here to help me out if I need any support on here. So we move towards our 2025 priorities and initiatives. So of course, our number one thing, we have implementation and communication plan to support the public. That was throughout council's strategic plan. So the new systems that are being implemented will certainly help us with that. And we will continue to do what we can until those systems go live. We will continue to work through developing legislative services, registry, and reviewing bylaws, policies, agreements, and amendments. So there's a lot of work to do on that front throughout the organization. We'll work with council to further define service levels. So we started that initiative this year, and we have our baseline that we can springboard off. So we will be looking forward to working with you in establishing some of those levels that you desire for our county. And we will continue working towards developing 5 to 10 year capital plans so that, again, we can be forward-looking and knowing where our resources, where we're might be needing resources and revenue sources. Corporate services initiatives implement their finance systems. And when I say finance systems, I'm talking our ERP for finance and our asset management system. So those projects are going ahead right now, and we're anticipating completion by fall next year. So with those systems, of course, we are having lots of communication internally, externally, and we'll be keeping council updated on those. And talked about policies, similar here, and working with department to strengthen our strategic forecast. So especially working with my other half over there at Bert in economic development to make sure that we're all coordinating our efforts in the right direction. So an overview of the revenue section here. Now the revenue section has changed by, I think, roughly $300,000 because in the previous presentation, the CCBF amount was quoted up here in operations, and I've moved it down to capital. So it's not that we have lost the three, it's just have been reallocated, and we're just seeing the changes in the revenues there. We can see the additional increase in the tax revenue from taxation from about $400,000 than what was there previously. But outside of that, the numbers have remained relatively the same as previously presented. As far as our corporate services overall budget, and again, this includes all expenditure outside of directly, you could say, the community services department, infrastructure department, and specifically the council. So everything else is rolled up into corporate services. When we remove the $6.2 million that we guesstimate for requisition, the overall budget as for operating expenditure is $3.7 million. We are seeing the changes in areas of contracted services have gone down some, and let me just go to the next slide here. Just to talk about the slide before I talk about the changes. So in each of the departments, we have the slides, and essentially it's showing council an overview of how the transfers are working. So number 3 is essentially communicating any amounts that are depreciation or other allowances that might not be directly cash payout, but some of it is funded through the budget. Number 5 is showing the internal transfers that we are doing out of either capital reserve or out of the operating budget to fund mostly the capital expenditures. Number 6 being the capital expenditure should be equal in the capital revenue so that they match. And number 7 is essentially showing the amounts that's either being transferred out of the budget to fund capital expenditure, or the amounts that's coming out of operational reserve. So we have some programs, for example, where, let's say I had a budget this year for $100,000 to do a project that I didn't get finished, and I know that's there, so I put it into reserve this year, and then I take it back out. So it's not taking out new money out of reserve, I'm just carrying over that. So that's what that negative shows. So that $515,000 is essentially the reserve that's there for the capital projects for the implementation, because that's part of what makes that up in that. So, okay, so.
Councilor Unity, clarification.
Well,
Question.
are you done this section?
Almost, I just have
Almost,
this.
okay. I'll hold my question. till the
Okay,
end.
okay, very well. So just highlight and going over some of the changes that we have here. So we have some contracted services. We have the new initiative that's on the budget that Paul mentioned. We have the asset management data collection, and I just want to highlight that a little bit, just to put a little bit more context around that. So throughout the years of our team developing the asset management system, infrastructure would loan our team one of their staff, whether throughout the summer or throughout the year. So our intent is to upskill our infrastructure staff that as they're working, they're collecting that data. But this year is that year of implementation and training and upskilling for everyone. The intent is to get those 2 staff so that infrastructure work is not falling behind while their permanent staff is actually the staff who is going to be collecting the data, not the temporary staff. So while they're learning and doing all of that, then there are staff that are still getting work done, so things are not slowing down. So that's the intent there. So we took most of that in general operations, because over the years, infrastructure has been sort of loaning their staff and carrying that load. So this is just to shift that there. So that's the intent there. But yeah, you can, any questions? You may have right now, yeah.
Yeah,
And I can go back to the slide that you may be referring to.
it was the previous slide that you just
Okay.
had up there.
Oh, okay.
So I'm looking at all of the column of description of items.
Yeah.
And we've been aware of all of them, I believe, but I'm not familiar with the contracted and general services with respect to the ICF review. What exactly is that? Is that a person doing that? Is that, there's $200,000 allocated to that?
Right.
You want me to?
Go ahead.
We know through the arbitrator's decision that they have 4 cost allocation models that were primarily used. And some of those cost allocation models really raise the question of how equitable the distribution is. Now, the challenge is, the arbitrator's decision says that the municipality receiving the service, if they don't agree with the cost allocation model, onus is on the recipient municipality to propose a more equitable cost-sharing model. So, of the sharing of the services that benefit the residents of the town and the county, we are the recipients of the vast majority. I don't want to put a percentage on it, but I think the flow of dollars the other way, we're expecting to be in the neighborhood of $2.5 million. The dollars coming back I think it's $40,000 or $50,000. There are 12 different cost centers, not including the Performing Arts Center. So we have to do our research and our homework and determine if there are more equitable cost-sharing models to do that. So, yeah, the intention would be to garner some outside expertise that can really go through and look at all of that and have the county prepared for the review in April of 2026. And by the time we all blink twice, April of 2026, and you throw an election in the middle, et cetera, is going to be here. So this is doing our preparation for that very important review that is slated to occur in April of 2026.
Just to follow up, I guess, to what Councillor Dean had there, in regards to that 200,000 though, if we spend a bunch of time and money on outside resources trying to draft, a better stance or kind of a review on the services that we're paying and the legislation changes and everything that we put money and resources into is, we'll say half of it, if it ends up different than what the current legislation is that really cost beneficial for us at that point then to have all this money into something that we need to go back and review and redo?
Yeah,
Because
so
we don't know what the changes are going to be yet, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done here because I'm going by memory, but I think there's 12 different cost centers. There will be some of them that we may have some guarded optimism that the legislative amendments will help us. There'll be others that are more of I'll call them the core services, et cetera. Highly unlikely those will change. So really should be a phased approach, starting in those ones where we think there's not really much chance of adjusted, and then do the other ones after now, the amendments are supposed to be introduced in the spring, so some of those that we would hold in abeyance, we can look at the legislation and decide if some of them can come off the list or not. Now, also, if those amendments are introduced early in the spring, well, we could know the lay of the land legislation for all of it. So we'll be very mindful of what you're saying, that we don't want to be researching some of them, and some of them areas where we're really hoping there be some legislative amendments, we would do those later in the process so that if the legislation changes, hopefully we don't have to do them, or there can be a different look at what is required. But it's just there's a substantive lead time to get through all this and be able to take information that would hopefully have some influence on the outcome. As we know in the past, we've not been able to influence the outcome And the other thing we have to remember, if that agreement, quite probable, the new agreement could have a 5-year term. This one did, it was retroactive. So if you do the math at 5 times $2.5 million, the only way we can manage this expenditure is through the review and the cost allocation formulas. Once that's done and that is established, we'll be stroking a check for 5 years at that level. So that's the other concerning pieces here, is this is our only opportunity to try to manage that cost center, which is significant. I mean, $2.5 million is significant to our benefit. Now, none of that is being critical of, our residents benefit from good facilities, and the county and the town have worked together for years, which is all good. But we have to be mindful of what's happening to that cost center and make sure that we're trying to control it the best we can. And this is our avenue to control it. And it only comes up once every 5-ish years. If you get a 5-year agreement, you've got to do your homework well, because you're casting the die for those 5 years. So we'll be very mindful of what you're saying. I believe we would suggest to you this is important work to get done.
Councilor Rose?
Just so since we're on this ICF topic, while we were in the process of this judicial review, we were bound by legislation that said you had a 5-year timeline. The arbitrator made her decision based on a 5-year timeline and set the date for when this has to be redone. Then the province says, okay, we're going to look at the legislation, and they're looking at all this legislation based on the latest ministerial order that came out. And their ministerial order says the timeline is now 7 years. The interval is 7 years. And they give us almost 1 more year than the arbitrator did, but that was after the arbitration. So which one's fine?
Well, the agreement you signed, and the agreement you signed says April 1st of 2026. The legislation says it could be 7, but it doesn't say it has to be 7. So, I mean, if the town thinks April 1st of 2026 should be extended, I mean, they've got to talk to you, because it would require an amendment, because that's the review date that's baked right in the agreement, which you'll recall, because you did a lot of due diligence on that agreement to get it the best it could be before it was adopted. So right now, the county's position would be the agreement says, and it is April 1st of 2026.
Councilor Wilhelm?
Just with regard to that line item, I think, we're hoping to have a new CAO in position in 2025. He's going to do a full review of this budget as well. I don't mind earmarking it right now on interim budget, but we're going to do a full review of this again in the spring, and who knows, the new CAO might want to take that on himself, or he might not. But if it's there, it's earmarked for now. It doesn't look like it's increasing our budget significantly, but I would imagine the new CAO will review some of these new initiatives when he comes in as well.
Any other questions?
Okay. So our next section, we'll move on to our safety. And we'll have
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. So I'll draw your attention to the priorities and initiatives, because they really make up the total amount of the new initiatives that we had for the increased health and safety training. The first one I'll start with is to provide people leader training, and that's actually really split into a couple different initiatives. So the first one is to actually provide training to our supervisors, and that's on how to manage people. OHS has obligations for them that are very serious, so we need to provide them with training on how to manage people, as opposed to training on how to fulfill the tasks that they do. The other part of that is violence and harassment training for all the staff. We also want to introduce an ergonomics program. So we currently do not have one in place. So that consists of, again, training, assessment, software, and the tools needed. And that actually applies to both the field and the office staff as well. And the hopes for that and the benefit for that is reducing the WCB rates, right? Reducing claims with WCB, definitely. That's one of the highest claim overall for all industries. So we want to work on that. The next thing I want to do is initiate an annual safety presentation. So this would be exposing staff to speakers who can tell a personal story about, living through an incident and how they survived and how their life has changed. I think that that's really important. And I think the biggest thing for that is also leadership to show a commitment to safety by demonstrating that, they've put the time into this, they've provided support for this, and, they're getting everybody together to listen to that story. I think that also helps increase the safety culture as well. And I know myself, I remember things easier when I hear the story than when I have to look in a blue book with OHS on it. The next thing we want to do is also implement various health and wellness initiatives. Those are things that are going to focus on the physical and mental activities for our workforce. That is actually, I'm going to be partnering with the HR individuals so that we can get together and either put out options for initiatives or take suggestions on initiatives, and then also work to implement them and provide resources for them, and then also maintain those initiatives as well. And then the last thing is next year is our recertification year for our core, so we have to get that done with an external auditor. So those are the high-level notes. I'm not sure if you have any questions or if you need more information.
Questions at this point? It's pretty straightforward. So you can continue.
Sorry, what was that, Chair?
Feel free to continue.
I believe that would be all for safety services.
That's all that I have for safety. Those initiatives make up the bulk of that new initiative of the 50,000. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let you guys off easy.
The year nights.
Oh, look at that.
That's what I was saying.
Whenever you're ready, Sheldon.
All right. Good afternoon, Council. Same, I'll hit on the priorities and initiatives as well for the 2025 year. So coordinate with AEMA, Emergency Management ICS 300, in-person training for all county staff. I just attended this training this year. It's a 3-day training. Super, super awesome. Really hits home on the positions that ICS you should be following, so I would like to have that here with the county. Coordinate a full-scale third-party fire service review, which was already indicated by the CAO, which will include the town of Whitecourt, because they respond into the county into District 1. Revision of the current standard operating guidelines. Coordinate and conduct a regional fire department NFPA center training courses for all stations. We are currently doing that now, but we want to keep that building block going for next year. And update the fire equipment replacement plan and fire fleet capital plan for the initiatives. Just going back to, just gonna find my page here. So for the budgets themselves, there was an increase per station, but overall, there's my overall expenditures here, Alicia. There we are. So the 2024 overall was 980,000. The 2025 was 1.4. Most of that is going to be into the training aspect of things. Also, general contract and general services is a big one. Having a third-party instructor come in, doing third-party training from another company coming in can be pricey. Having a 3-day course can be up there in cost, but it's essential for our volunteers and our fire individuals to have that training at a standard. Repairs and maintenance is a big one. As you know, on the capital side of things, there is a truck that is being put forth. Again, we're putting some Band-Aids on some units right now, and those Band-Aids are starting to seep through. So we need to look at doing preventative maintenance is super key for this equipment. So that's a big ticket item there. Safety and protective clothing. As you all know already, Council, there was a conversation quite some time ago about we're lacking in approved NFPA standard bunker gear. To outfit an individual right now, you're $5,000 per person. Pretty pricey price tag there. But departments have 12 to 20 people in their department. We want to keep that number up there. We don't want to lose our volunteers. We want to make sure we have the right people, the people in place with the right equipment that are being trained to a standard that can respond to emergency calls and help our county and our residents out. Any questions?
Question, a comment. I think all the training and safeties of the new initiatives are very important. I mean, what is this dollar figure against the life of one firefighter or somebody else they could be saving? With regards to the admin position, is that somebody that we would promote from within, or would we be hiring from outside the organization?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't know the answer to that until we build the position description and you advertise and see if you've got internal or external. I mean, we've got a good sense of what that would be. I mean, right now, those are being covered off not adequately because there's too many demands on each side. So that would be answered through the posting process.
Okay.
Councilor Dean?
Just to clarify that, the current situation is there's one admin position that's being shared. Right, okay.
Councilor Prestidge?
The chair, Sheldon. On the maintenance of the fire equipment, like the trucks and stuff, if we're getting another heavy-duty mechanic, can our own shop do a lot of that work? Or I understand the recertification they can.
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, to a point, there's only a line in the sand if you
Yeah.
take that analogy. They cannot do pump testing.
Yeah.
That has to be third-partied out to a emergency technician that has a certification. So if the county would like to look at bringing on an individual as a heavy duty mechanic that has a certification, that would substantially help the bottom line.
Questions? Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, through the chair to Sheldon. Number 3, the revision of the current standard operating guidelines. I know we've been looking for them now for probably 2 to 3 years, and I'm just wondering what the priority is there.
Through the chair, Councillor Cookon, good question. There's been a lot on my desk, especially DRP right now, and the SOGs have been pushed aside. A lot of resources,
And this is
there's a lot going on.
Well, one of the real drivers has been trying to recover flood expenses through the province as well. And that's had a big impact, and you have to justify everything you submit because it's recover after the fact, and they're looking for reasons to say no. So you have to be pretty diligent about trying to generate that information.
Councilor Bell?
I just answered my own question. I just see it's listed there as third party, so
Didn't mean to interrupt you there, Sheldon. Sorry.
Yeah, so if I may, to sort of go on to that point, that CAO said the main assistant would drastically help with moving those SOGs forward.
Any questions? Not seeing any here, I guess.
Okay, moving on to emergency management would be next on the docket. This one here, the biggest ticket items is again training. Yes, the AEMA training, the individuals come in and it's 2 or 3 or 4 days training, but there's expenses to that type of training. So that is a big one. AEMA is really pushing on having your individuals within your municipality or your company trained to a certain standard, to their standard. So we would really like to have our internal staff to an ICS 200 level, which takes time, right? Trying to schedule those, to have individuals there takes time. Any questions on emergency management?
Thanks, through the chair, not on the emergency management side, but just on the training. I'm wondering if have you gone through, or have we gone through the Alberta Fire Services Core Competency Framework? And I guess when I'm looking at this, what it really talks about is, based on your service levels that are set by councils, do you want to incorporate wildfire training? Do you need to incorporate You know, are you defensive only? Is there a different type of training? And it's actually a free template from the Alberta Fire Services Core Competency Framework. So have we ever gone through that you can spend a lot of money on training for areas that are not necessarily an area that we're going after, or that we're going to fight fires around. So I'm wondering, have we done that step before we decide on all training that we want to get to be done?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Burrows, I believe that we've looked at it, but I believe that's where the third-party review would also hit home on. Truthfully, they'll tell you your level of service, where you're at, and where you should be. Because our level of services for each station are different.
So no.
The answer would be no.
Look through this. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Nothing on emergency management?
Okay, thank you. Moving on to patrol services. This one here is going by a signed 5-year agreement that council signed 2 years ago. So we are currently moving on with that agreement. Any questions at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Sheldon. Before we go and spend an hour and a half, do we want to take a break or do we want to keep going? It always turned into a 10, so. We'll be back streaming at 3:40 with or without everybody. So let me know when we're off, Nikita. Okay, 3:40, we're back. Just wondering where we're going to next.
Infrastructure.
All right,
Yeah, so I have.
whenever you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. I'm here to present the operating budget for infrastructure services. After a few pages of, after a section, I'll stop for questions that you may have. Infrastructure services is responsible for over 900 kilometers of county roads and many other assets along the roads. We maintain county road infrastructure with 17 criminal operators, 2 mechanics, seasonal staff, and a number of office individuals. The development of this operating budget is focused on maintaining and finding ways to improve the current level of service by taking calculated risks and making educated decisions in prioritization based on asset management presentations that we have made to council on the categories that we're ready. Council will recall there are 2 categories that we were ready to make a presentation on. One is fleet, the other one is water, wastewater. Not to steal my own thunder too far, but water and wastewater is one area we have lots of challenges. We're running between fires every day, including today, for the Assiniboine. So in developing the operating budget, we also tried as much as possible to incorporate the asset management data and how we analyze those data into the development of the budget. So if you can flip to the next page. Under expenses, I'm just going to highlight the major areas of change for this page. This page focuses on the general administration, so things like fleet, building management, staffing, training, all those costs are on this page. We have a separate page for the actual physical work. So in terms of this general page, the major changes are materials and goods. That's to reflect the material cost increases and the forecasted additional work that we're planning to undertake next year. The second major category change is salaries and wages and benefits, and those are to do with the proposed additional positions. As you have already heard a summary from CEO Benedetto, as well as the normal salary, COLA and merit increases. I will point out there is one change on this page. It's the last line, vehicle fuel. It should not read 850 as proposed budget. It should stay the same as 2024 level is 750. We'll be making that reduction in the final version of the document. I didn't catch it in time. One last category of change is, or major changes under small tools, office equipment, and attractive items. This is where we allocated cost for buying computer software is a $4,000 budget per person for those new positions, as well as where we allocate things like shop tools. Under this category, we're forecasting the increase just because the 2024 actual expenditure level is already very close to the proposed 2025 and way higher than the 2024 budget. So, if I may just can you flip to page 57 of the PowerPoint? It gives a summary. So, in terms of additional positions we're seeking, the heavy-duty mechanic, as CEO Benedetto already mentioned, we did a economic analysis based on 30 to 40% discount if we do the work ourselves. The amount of saving, it's very close to the salary of a a full-time heavy-duty mechanic. And that's why we tried to propose this hoping the position will provide a better level of service at relatively same cost without putting any more costing pressure onto the county. The second new position that we proposed under infrastructure is a building management coordinator. And as CEO already mentioned, this function has been performed by different people, different staff in the past without a allocation of staffing. That leads to our buildings not being looked after in a proactive manner because we don't have dedicated resources. We have, just like water, wastewater, we have multiple failures in different buildings, and we have to find patches and repairs and just make it work. And this position is intended to be responsible for building maintenance as well as building management. I don't want to miss the opportunity of having a more proactive plan for managing our buildings. Council heard the presentation on our building assets. In the next 25 years, we need on average about somewhere between $400,000 to $500,000 investment to just keep our buildings conditions at the current level or at the current renewal level, so that does require a dedicated resource to look after that. The third position that we put under this budget is a capital project coordinator. When I started here, there's no dedicated resource for delivering capital projects. In the past, the capital projects have been shouldered by either the director himself or the manager of infrastructure services, which isn't a well use of those people's time. That takes time away from those people from doing their real management and senior management jobs, at the risk of not being able to have capital projects ready to go. So, and capital projects, delivering capital project does require dedicated resource for people who's trained and capable and versed in the area to look after the delivery of capital projects on a day-to-day basis. So the page 57 provides a really good summary of all the increases from all the major categories of increases, and I already talked about the fuel, which I will take it out, and the additional wages due to merit and COLA increases. Overall, if you remove the fuel and then recognize the additional cost due to proposed positions and recognize the cost due to inflation of materials and goods, our budget level is, our 2025 proposed operating budget level is at par or at comparable levels as 2024. I'm just going to stop there for a second to see if there's any questions before I move on.
I've got actually two quick ones here, if I could, and then I'll go with Councilor Wilhelm. First one, I definitely understand the need for heavy-duty mechanic, as we expressed earlier. It's about $250,000 in outside services that we're requiring, and this is 112. Yes, we're reducing one line item on this side, but we're reducing it at another end. So I can see that gain for the municipality in the big picture. My question, though, in regards to a couple of the other positions we have listed here, like the building coordinator and project officer. Obviously, we have a lot of stuff and work that they can be kind of working on the side, but given that it is a new position and we have a lot of these different kind of manager things we're opening up, are we able to roll that into one position to start with, and so we can kind of get a better idea gauging the scope of the work and how busy they're going to be? I just, for me, we'll say like the building coordinator, I have, and again, this is just my ignorance towards position, but I have issues seeing that being a 40-hour-a-week position to look at building conditions across the buildings that the municipality owns. For 40 hours a week, 12, 4 week, or full time. I'm just curious if some of these, and not that we don't need the help, because you do, especially on the the capital projects, trying to get those ready and ahead, but can some of these, like the capital project manager, the building maintenance manager, and even environmental services kind of be put into, or coordinator be put into one role to start with, and then let that position expand as we have more capacity, say next year or the year after with the budgets?
To the chair, we have taken into those consideration in the phasing plan of what Paul described. So if I can leave to Paul to discuss that towards the end, when we talk about phasing.
Right. Councilor Wilhelm?
You guys answered my question, just with regards to phasing these new positions in and maybe combining some in the short term and expanding them in the long term. So you answered my question.
We, to the chair and council, we do recognize the heavy load that we're proposing here, and that's why we do have some plans towards the end of the presentation to discuss.
I guess to administration generally, we definitely understand the need for more individuals. It's just trying to find the best way to utilize the funds that we have available to make those needs. Councilor Burrows?
Thanks. Through the chair to Jeff. I guess I just want to focus a little bit more on the building coordinator and the project officer. So to clarify on the project officer, is this somebody who's going to be, when we've hired contractors, we're doing a larger project, this is somebody who's going to be on the ground with these projects, actually doing some project management oversight on them where, you know, because oftentimes if you're doing a road rebuild or something and 17 loads of gravel are supposed to come in, the cheap guys will go with 14 because there's nobody standing there. And is this the type of project manager that we're talking about? Like, can you tell me exactly what this is? Or is this somebody sitting in the office? And then I'll ask the second question on the coordinator.
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, my envisioning of this position is for simpler projects, so smaller capital projects. This person will be the person who's managing a contractor. We wouldn't have a consultant for simpler projects. For more complex project, if we're repaving East Mountain Road and West Mountain Road, where we do need a consultant, we do need a team of consultants, we do need a team of people from the consultant for surveyors, material testers, checkers, scales person, then this person will be the point person from our county to supervise the consultant team. We still need, in those major projects, we do need a PM from the consultant team to manage their team. It's not fair for our employee to start giving directions to people like scales person or checkers. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so. The second part would be on the building coordinator. So if you get a spot like a building coordinator, you're actually going to bring a guy in who's going to do condition assessments on the buildings, start looking at how old all the equipment. Is he going to roll in all that data to an asset management plan? Is it that detailed, or is it just, can you tell me if we're going to roll that, if that position is going to dovetail with asset management so that we know when we have 15-year-old furnaces that are on the brink of failure and 15-year-old water heaters that are going to flood a building, and is that what this is about, or is it more kind of managing the day-to-day?
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, as I mentioned earlier, there's two major components of this position. One is the day-to-day building maintenance side. And the day-to-day building maintenance, it's absolutely not a full-time job, I can tell you that, but it's on average somewhere between 15 to 20 hours a week that we require someone to take care of building repairs. And this year, through the summer, we're able to hire a temporary staff to look after our building repairs. And this person is a handyman himself, so he's able to perform those repairs without the use of a contractor. That's one major component of the job duties. The second part of the job duty is may not be to the level of a consultant like Building SCI, who is the consultant who did our building assessment, may not to that level of complexity. However, we do expect the person to perform inspections and assessments on the condition of different building components. And this person needs to be familiar with building codes, with structure, with mechanical, with electrical systems. So this person can perform inspection on the condition and some simpler levels of diagnostics to know which specialized contractor to bring in and to plan for those more defined scope of capital projects. For example, if we say we need to replace all 6 rooftop units, that this person will plan the work 5-10 years out and help us put a budget together, and then eventually spec out the requirements and hire a contractor, supervise the contractor. So there's 2 major components to the position.
So just to clarify, it will be plugging into the asset management?
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Don't see anything else for you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the second part of infrastructure, which is the physical work. The infrastructure budget is broken down into the first part as administration, second part as the physical work, which is called roads and sidewalks. The next 2 pages, you will see the expenses on the first page, and then the major changes summarized in the second. So in developing the proposed 2025 budget, as I mentioned earlier, we have taken some educated decisions or we have made some educated decisions and taking some calculated risks in rebalancing how we invest in our different categories. For example, bridges, councillors will have heard my presentation that we are doing not pretty good, but adequately in our bridge, managing our bridge assets. So in the previous years, we've been investing heavily. For example, in 2023, our budget was around $500,000 between bridge rehab and bridge repair. And that's similar budget level in 2022. Given the condition of our bridges and other needs in other areas that are more pressing, I have rebalanced that. So councillors will see a reduction in bridge repair budget and then increases in others. I'm just giving that as example to showcase what I'm describing here. So if I would just go to the major line items to show you what are the major changes. Beaver control, we're forecasting an increase. That's due to the increase in ditching programs and culvert work that we're planning to do, and beaver control is one of the ancillary services to that. Bridge repairs, I already mentioned, we've taken an educated decision there, trying to reduce it so we can come up with funding to pay for other areas. Calcium stabilization, we forecasting a increase together with dust control, which is a later line. This is for the reason, Councilor remember from my gravel road improvement program presentation that we trying to do additional calcium stabilization in the hope of improving the level service as well as hopefully reducing the level of grading that's needed. As a general principle that if you keep up with your calcium stabilization, typically twice a year, you're able, and you keep it consistent from year to year, you're able to reduce your grading needs. So this line and the dust control line reflect that. The other area that we have made some changes is coal mix to gravel. As council may remember from the capital presentation, we're no longer doing this prioritization. We're taking the opportunity to do subdivision roads as reconstruction / rehabilitation. So there wouldn't be any expected circumstance of converting coal mix to gravel anymore. Therefore, we have zeroed that line. Moving on, under culvert repairs, councilors will recall my presentation on culverts, and we have put some money towards capital on the capital plan for the replacement of regular culverts, And here, the increase represents the operating side of the increase. Moving on, I already mentioned about dust control, the grading. We are forecasting a reduction of grading from 2024 budget. The reason for the reduction, one is because we are increasing the costs, the budget on calcium stabilization, but at the same time, we just look at our past expenditure. Even though we're paying $541,000 for budget, we're only able to spend under $400,000, $371 to be exact. So we do think that we're going to spend a bit more in 2025, especially given our various different road improvement, road condition improvement activities, but probably not to the 2024 budget level. Therefore, we're making that educated guess, taking a number in the middle. Moving on to guardrail maintenance, council will see a major increase here. This is to do with Old Blue Ridge Highway. We have the guardrails there. Some of the sections of the guardrail being damaged through collision, and the sections of the guardrail are generally low. We do think there's, with some shoulder pole can help, but we do also need some contracted services to clean the windrows underneath the guardrail. So this cost is to reflect the work that we plan to do on Old Bridge Highway. Moving on, the next category of major changes is re-graveling. We budgeted for $613,000 in 2024, but as council can see, our actual expenditure is already over $100,000 higher. So we adjusted the budget trying to match current year expenditure levels. So because the county has not been doing the adequate level of re-graveling in the past, so we need to catch up on re-graveling program as well. So I didn't want to reduce the program further below the current year actual expenditure level. The last category of major increases is under the road rehabilitation. Councillors will see that in previous years it's budgeted at zero. Well, if we have cold mix roads and hot mix roads, they need to be maintained and repaired. Simple example this year was in Blue Ridge. We had two locations where the pavement bulged up. We need money under this line to repair those. So and this year we also have done a major patching work on Township of 628, going up the hill towards Pride Valley, and that project itself, it's close to $60,000. So material cost is already high enough, and 300 some thousand. It's not a lot when it comes to pavement patching and repairs. That's the major changes on this page. I will just quickly go through the next page, and then I'll open the floor for questions. So under salaries and wages and benefits, as CEO Ben already mentioned, and Denisha already mentioned, we have included the seasonal laborers in portion of the seasonal labor under infrastructure and portion of under the general administration. So this reflects that, as well as there's the COLA increase, as well as the merit increase in the budget. And the other major changes I sort of already covered is the increase in culvert repair, the reduction in bridge repair, increasing in our creation or re-establishment of road rehabilitation, and then some others. That's a high-level summary of changes on the physical work side of infrastructure.
Councilor Will?
Through the chair, Jeff, you got a minus 142,170 decrease in wages. What's the line item that causes a significant decrease in wages?
So, to the chair too, Councillor. So part of that has to do with, so we're dealing with budget to budget numbers. So the budget last year to the budget this year. So the budget last year has different, you could say, numbers that pertains to wages, whether it was additional seasonal work to be done. But overall, in the budget, there's a change that for wages that are not in this budget, because the budget this year is based on, you could say, actual numbers and not, you could say, budget to budget. Like because we're comparing budget to budget, so there's a reconciling items to be done. So I'd have to go back to the 2024 budget to see where exactly they were. But overall, when you're looking at the line, so if I look at, I don't have it here. I don't have it here. Let me see if I have it on this one here.
So was it essentially like wages,
Yeah.
portions of wages couched in within
Yeah.
the budget itself
But, yeah.
for various
For various
staff
things, that
members?
was, yeah, specifically into the roadside.
Okay.
Yeah, not the overall, like the overall budget for infrastructure as we are seeing it on the page 54, which is their total transportation, we can see that wage increased. But that wage increase there includes all the new initiative.
Okay.
Right, so if we remove all the new initiatives, then we're falling below the number that is here right now.
Okay.
So there were some additional amounts there. And of course, that's just saying it includes, it's not saying that's all of it. So because again, we're reconciling budget to budget, so I would have to find all the changes in order to itemize out that.
It's not important. As
Yeah,
long as I
yeah.
got an overview, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Not seeing anything else yet? Jeff?
Okay, good afternoon, members of council. I'm here for the airport portion of the budget. So, the CYZU Airport's goal is to provide a safe and consistent environment for a variety of private and commercial aviators. CYZU is a certified airport. We're consistently in the top 10 busiest airports in Alberta that NAV Canada has stations at. So that includes the bigger, the GPs, the Edmontons and those ones as well. CYZU, we work hard to maintain our level of service. We currently have 3 full-time employees along with a seasonal operator. Our trained qualified employees understand and responsibilities that are laid out by the Canadian Aviation regulations. It's also, we follow TP 312. We maintain our emergency response plans, our safety management systems, our airport operations manuals, our winter maintenance plans, our animal control plans. So we do our best to make sure that everything in our level of service is kept to all the regulations that we have to follow at the airport. Moving on to the priorities and initiatives for us at the airport. We want to continue with our certification requirements with our QC audits with our TP 312 to make sure that our system is all laid out properly. We also have to audit our emergency response plans, our SMS, our manuals, our operation manuals. Every 3 years, we have to do a tabletop exercise every year. With the 4th year, we have to do a full-blown emergency. We just conducted one of those this past year. Worked out actually really good for us. We've identified a lot of areas that we need to concentrate on and to improve on, but it overall was a very good exercise. Then we're looking at CYZU is pursuing grant funding opportunities for It's important runway civil and electrical systems rehabilitation and upgrade. We also are going to address some deficiencies in a couple of our audits and emergency exercise. So that way we're providing the best level of service. Pursuant to development of the CYZU website and other promotional opportunities. And an update to the master plan is another one of the things that we would like to get done. Okay, then the 2025 proposed budget focuses on maintaining our current level and existing levels of service. By restoring the amalgamated manager's position to a full-time airport manager, other than our new initiatives, our budget is pretty much on par with our 2024 budget. And then if we switch to that one.
I'll just wait.
So for initiatives, we're looking at establishing the manager to be in a full-time position. We have some increases in wages, which has been discussed before. And we also have that 100,000 in there for an update to the master plan. Is there any questions?
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair, so that change to full-time, that means currently you're performing some duties and the budget is gonna capture those other duties.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor. Yeah, I'm half-time environmental services manager, half-time airport manager.
Yeah.
And at this moment, I'm acting field services manager.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Mike, sorry, go ahead.
If I may, through the chair to Councillor Dean, in 2020, prior to 2021, Steve's role was the full-time manager of environmental services. And then he was moving to the role of airport manager with the two positions amalgamated, which means one full-time FTE was vanished through that amalgamation. What we're proposing here is essentially to restore to a previous, pre-2021 staffing level for these two positions. Thank you.
Question I asked before, to start there in regards to the airport master plan. How many years ago was it that we passed that airport master plan? And out of all the initiatives and suggestions that came out of the last airport master plan that we've currently got on the table, how many of those have we actually utilized?
So, through the chair, the initial master plan was 2013. Then there was an update done to it in 2020. I haven't had much of an opportunity in learning what's in the master plan because starting in this position, learning and getting trained on all the different things. I have reviewed it multiple times. There's not much useful, as I learn the airport world, there's not a lot of useful that can help with what I'm doing out there. The other big things is with the update to the land use bylaw, with questions with ownership versus leasing, with questions on just a general direction to keep pushing that airport forward. It just seems to be a good time to take all that stuff together and update that document to be something that's more precise moving forward.
Councillor Dean?
Excuse me. So through the chair, I'm just going to reiterate a comment that's been made by various councillors, and that is, this current council has not had an opportunity to look at that most recent master plan. Our committee did. And we went through, and there's a checklist at the end of every section that with recommended recommendations. And we went through and identified which recommendations had been acted on. And I think, in my opinion, before we go ahead with another master plan, this council needs to have a look at the current one and see where we're at.
Councilor Gross?
So two things. One, sorry, I went to a different window here. The one thing is, if, what I don't see in here is the revenue generated by the airport by taxation to the properties that are at the airport. And I know I brought this up for 7 years now, and they dump the taxation from buildings and businesses that are out there into general revenue and then don't show it in this. In order for you to do a proper business study and know whether we're moving ahead or behind with the airport, we need to know what kind of revenue the taxation is generating at the airport. Because if we were to, and let's say we just make the case that the airport's too darn expensive and we're just gonna close the thing. And that revenue is probably not gonna show up somewhere else in the municipality, it's gone with the loss of the airport. So when you're trying to make a business case for an airport, it would be nice if all the revenue generation that's in that business model gets dumped into the budget for it so that we as councilors can actually justify where we're going. And if we do catch a new business or a new build or something, we'll actually see that change and we can measure some progress year to year. Now I know, because I spent a lot of time out there, that we haven't had, I think we've had one new business spring up in the last 10 years, and this is a huge expenditure on the part of the municipality. And I would think also that I'm going to turn to the strategic plan, to the airport master plan. As an airport user, I sat, and I think the original airport user master plan was over 400,000. That's the number that I seem to remember by Airbiz back in 2013, and they were international airport developers. So I don't know where that came from, but it was a big chunk of change. And what Councillor Dean, I think, is following up on or indicating is that we as council, and no council that I'm aware of, has ever actually set a strategic plan for the airport and had a vision for the airport where they want it to go. And I think a lot of those questions around lease versus own, how do you incentivize business, how do you attract people, what do you attract, and that operational versus revenue generation versus operational costs, we haven't had a chance to actually sit down and talk. So I think before anything gets done at that airport, council, whatever council, whenever whether it's the new council or this council, needs a proper strategic plan for that airport so that there's a vision incorporated in it, and then you can build in, where you might go as a master plan. I think we've been putting the cart before the horse on that airport in doing the tactical stuff, the strategic master plan, airport master plan. Because there were things in the airport master plan a decade ago that, in sitting on the airport advisory committee, were pushed to go ahead, and the minutes to that meeting were lost. And so phase 2 was supposed to be phase 3 was supposed to be jumped in front of phase 2. We were supposed to be having discussions about that, never happened. The minutes of the meeting got lost, nobody could find it, and again, it was just useless. So that's where I'd like to go with I think that we need to go with the airport master plan. And again, you don't necessarily have to, from an accounting point, dump the money into that budget, but if we can't see the revenue generated by the properties at that airport, because they are specific to the airport, and they're commercial properties generating commercial revenues, and they don't show up in the budget.
Are you good? Were you still on another thought?
No, I'm
Okay, I just didn't want to interrupt you.
sorry, I was,
Councillor Wilhelm.
With regards to the budget stuff, I totally agree with, no person in our municipality should be, or no manager in a municipality should be running 3 different departments or being split so dramatically. So I can, that increase in the budget. I just had 2 questions, or I guess it's a follow-up. I think with regards to the master plan, both the Whitewater Advisory Committee and Council, before we dump another $100,000 in creating another master plan, let's do a better job reviewing the one that we currently have, rather than just spending potentially another $100,000 on something that won't get utilized until we understand what's actually happening there. And then, 2, you've got a line here, other, that's $48,555. I just was trying to determine where that line item was coming from.
Again, that line that says other there, it's the reconciling number
Reconciling?
between, right, because we're going budget to budget, so
Okay.
we'll have to go in and find.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if it was one specific thing or 2
No.
things. Okay.
So the church, Councillor Woodland, that 48,000 is predominantly a new sign for the airport, as well as a website for the CYZU airport, we're trying to develop.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to administration and council. Before we dump another 100,000 in the plan, there's so many things that have to get straightened out at the airport. The land use, what we're gonna do with that, and, I lost my thought on the second one, but we can't really do a new plan or add to it until we get this other stuff finalized. So I don't think we need to do that this year. It's gonna take us probably the better part of the year just to go over what needs to be done out there. So I think it should be taken.
Any other questions, comments?
If I just could with
Mr. Guerrero?
Steve's position is a perfect example of what we're talking about, where the workload is unmanageable. And then it becomes extremely problematic, where today, where we have a water system emergency on top of that. So that makes it almost impossible, just because of being inadequately resourced, to move some of those initiatives forward. So we absolutely hear you, but the other fix that's got to be commensurate with that is doing something around the workloads, so that Steve isn't get a little wedge over here where he's trying to run an airport. And by some of the positions that we'll talk to you about in more detail, some of that is meant to take some of the pressure off, so a manager can actually focus more on their core responsibility. So that's why that's a real important discussion we're going to have about these positions, and this is just case in point. So we do look forward to having that discussion with you, but this is how serious it is.
Any other questions? That's where we,
Members of council, our acting environmental services manager, Rob Kerr, is currently fighting the fire in Fort Assiniboine. So Steve and I would tag team try to cover the utility or in general environmental services budget, operating budget for 2025. We have 2 water treatment plants and 2 lagoons and 1 reservoir plant for our county in terms of water and wastewater. In terms of transfer sites, we have 3 transfer sites in the county. The water wastewater services has 2 full-time utility operators, plus Steve has his permanent job, 0.5 of the manager. And then for the transfer site, we have 3 permanent part-time employees running those 3 transfer sites. In terms of the area itself, it's a highly regulated area where our level of service is driven by not only the residents' expectations, but also quite a few provincial legislation, especially under the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act. And I did a quick search in the past few days, and there's at least 5 different regulations applied to us, including wastewater, stormwater drainage regulation, potable water regulation, code of practice for waterworks systems, code of practice for wastewater lagoons, and code of practice for high-quality groundwater. It's a highly regulated area, and they also require highly regulated professions and certified operators to operate them. The environmental regulation area is just getting more and more stringent, and the reporting requirements more and more. And couple that with our aging infrastructure, that's what's driving our current staff running between fires. So in terms of 2025 priorities and initiatives, we plan to, as part of the council may already heard from the capital, where we propose to replace the backup pump and generator in the Fort Assiniboine water treatment plant. We're proposing under operating to perform some repairs and upgrades to the supervisory control and data acquisition system, commonly known as SCADA. We want to replace 3 service water lines in Fort Assiniboine on State Avenue. That's already part of the capital budget. We also want to replace 1 service water line by the airport. That's also mentioned in the capital. We want to replace a plant analyzer, which is also upgrading to a new SCADA system for the airport reservoir. Currently, that plant analyzer is faulty, and our staff have to visit the plant every single day to take reading because we cannot rely on the system, and that just further drains the resources that we have. And in addition to that, we have manholes and stormwater lines that we need to repair. Next page, please. Just looking at the details of the operating budget. We have, again, I'll just highlight 3 lines that has increased from previous year levels and explain why. The line that's called contracted and general services, there's an increase of about $90,000, and that's to do with proposed manhole repairs and line repairs that we try to perform. As council recall that this year in 2024 we've done camera inspections, and that inspection does give us photos and reports on necessary repairs on manholes and lines themselves. Next one is general medical janitorial office and shop supplies. There's an increase of $70,000, and that's to do with purchasing water meters and hydrants that we need to replace. The next line increase is under materials and goods. That's other material that's needed for repair. For example, buying cold mix. If we're digging up a road that's currently cold mix or hot mix, and after we repair a line or water meter replacement or hydrant replacement, we have to just restore the infrastructure back to its original condition. So those are the 3 main increases we have in the 2025 operating budget in terms of physical work. If you go to the next, it'll be page 69 of the PowerPoint, that kind of summarize the changes in the budget. So once again, we're asking for the manager of environmental services to be restored. There's some dollars for COLA increases. There's wage related to merit increase. I mentioned about the contracting services and general supplies has to do with water meters and hydrant. There's contracted services increases due to force main and manhole repairs and line repairs. And then there's the general goods material that's related to other things we need to buy. So if you just leave the additional increases on the side, our budget level is comparable to 2024. But our current ask 2025 increases are are generally triggered by the aging and failing critical infrastructure needs and the restoring the manager position. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Not seeing any, want to continue? So on community services next. You're up, Heather.
Just with regards to that, it's 4:30 now. Do we want to continue to start into this? Or do we want to?
You probably get through community services and then.
Just highlighting the time.
Just check with administration, what is our stop time on this?
Well, our
Council's at
council
5.
meeting starts at 5, and I
Give
don't,
this 15 minutes and then we'll.
and I haven't heard people going by with food yet,
Yeah.
unless I missed them.
No pressure.
No pressure.
You can come back tomorrow.
You can use back by.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. So community services in a nutshell, if you're not familiar with it, we do the FCSS funding. We also have recreation, arts and culture programs, our bursaries, we look after libraries, cemeteries, which is kind of separated in here. But we also manage several grant programs and look after programming. And we also support the emergency services. So for our new initiatives are mainly based on those 2 new positions that were mentioned earlier. One of them being a community programmer. And to answer your question, Rave, the programmer itself would also do FCSS programming. So yes, we did enter into an agreement with the library boards or the library board to deliver programming in those communities. That programming is based in the library, and it's mainly just for those libraries. If we had this programmer, we could offer more direct programming through FCSS. So what we do right now is mainly indirect programming from the province, which means we give grants to our community groups, and we hold, the one direct programming we do is the volunteer appreciation 1 year, and then seniors programming the next year that we alternate. So this community programmer could start focusing on a little bit more direct programming based on other needs in our community. So one thing that we did target wasn't necessarily fitness programs or ones that might be like crafting and other ones that might be done at the libraries that I talked to the girls about, but it would be based on training for our community groups. So right now, we have many community groups that are struggling with volunteer retention, for lack of a better word. And if we could provide some different training for them on how a board operates, what's expected of them, how to increase your volunteerism, how to fundraise, we could help them with grant writing. We could find grants within the province, federally. Like right now, a portion of my position is liaising with those community groups so that they're more successful. But it's not, I can't give them a lot of attention because there's 500 other things that are being basically asked or needed to be done. So a community programmer could really focus on them. Now, this isn't something necessarily that Joan and I talked and SMT also talked. This could be a seasonal position. This could also be something, it's not 100% necessary right away this year because we are coming out of that financial recovery plan. It would just increase the levels of service that we already provide to the community. It just kicks it up that extra notch that we could provide more quality of place when we're looking at attracting other businesses. Part of what they also look at is what can my family do once we get there, and having those programming, those other options are pretty vital. And you often hear the term community capacity building, but some people forget that's not necessarily gardening, preserves, that's also skill development. We have a lot of fascinating people in this community, and if we can increase their skill development, that increases some of their businesses, they might expand their business. Again, that also helps with that economic development, that quality of place. So it kind of has that twofold tertiary kind of benefit. So that was one of the major ones. The other one was a recreation coordinator. Now this has sat in abatement since 2019 when that position was removed. And again, with reviewing our recreation master plan, our community services committee requests for other rec items. A lot of this hasn't been done other than maintenance on our rec sites. And we've got the government of Alberta and some issues not issues, but Blue Ridge the Blue Ridge gravel pit's almost depleted. So that section that we talked about years ago, if those of you guys have been on council for a while, about expanding the Blue Ridge recreation area, they're looking at this being depleted right away, and we need to start strategically thinking how we can incorporate that into our assets. So that's also something the recreation coordinator could do. They would definitely, I made a few notes, they would work with our asset management team for sure. And they could do such like inspections, erosion control, and have that other set of eyes for our asset management team. But the big part of it would also be preventative maintenance. Right now we mow, or we have, Jeff and I are gonna be talking about that later when we talk about the other facilities. But we do that, we put out fires as opposed to thinking strategically, how does this fit into the overall asset management of the county facilities? So that first year, we think with the recreation coordinator, they would familiarize themselves with our recreation sites, our strategic plan, the master plan. We redid a survey of that recreation master plan, and then they could start looking at how those synergies are gonna happen within the departments, with our external stakeholders, and they can also increase the service levels that we give to our external stakeholders like Government of Alberta, who is looking at handing us over the Center of Alberta project when that's complete. So that liaise would be a huge impact. So, I mean, we can look at this strategically and stagger it for sure, but these are items that we identified, these positions that would definitely help us if we choose, or you choose, to increase our levels of service. Otherwise, there isn't a lot of changes to community services budget other than we put a little bit extra money in for Blue Ridge Family Fun Day, strictly because it's been such a huge hit. And as we've expanded, those of you that were there this year, we expanded with the Friendship Society and some other things, and it's getting bigger, and those costs are increasing as well. Something else I was thinking that the programmer could do is, previously we had the community liaison and programmer, as our CEO mentioned. And so what that also can be is working with the library to make sure that they are successful with that programming, to work with our community groups to see what else we could do. However, we also see this as being something else that can help them with their fundraising efforts, their fundraising abilities. So it's a liaison with our community groups, not just a programmer. It would be a multifaceted position so that they could work with everyone and also increase our events. Right now, our events are pretty limited. We used to do like drumming in Hardlock Canyon. We used to do a summer solstice events. So as our resources dwindled financially and staff-wise, so did those events. So a community programmer could actually increase a lot of those events, work with the town of Whitecourt and other partners we have regionally for those events. I'm trying to get into that 15 minutes. I'm still, I'm close.
7 minutes.
I think, Joan, did I miss anything there that you're looking at? Okay, oh, and on the one slide you have, page 74, it talks about increase in contracted services. That was the other one, that might be a little bit more, was 7,000. That was for designing and printing of the Welcome to Woodlands document that we have. It is not cheap to print a document that is not just a piece of paper. Like if we want it to be what we want it to be, so that we put that in there anticipating what those costs would be. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of major change.
Any questions for Heather?
Not really a question, but more of a statement. I mean, I sat with you guys for a little while.
Yeah.
And I think as far as the programmer's concerned, as long as we keep that person empowering the volunteerism and facilitating rather than necessarily funding, there has to be a certain level of activity that goes on for fundraising for volunteer groups. It kind of, it binds them around a central problem, I guess, or you know, kind of setting a goal and trying to achieve that goal together. And I always find if you go to a facility that's run by a group of volunteers versus a facility that is run by government, there is a cold, more rigid feel to the government-run facility than there is to a volunteer. Plus, at the municipal level, I think you're getting way more value for dollar supporting on the volunteer end. So I'm trying to word this as tactfully as I can, but I like the idea of it as long as we're, coming at it from a facilitation kind of thing.
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, that is something that we've kind of done since 2019 as that role was condensed to my current role. We still work with community groups. I have a few of them that phone and say, okay, what do we do here? How do we do this? And I can work with them, but to have somebody more full-time that can just focus on them, I think that would further enhance less money. They would need less money, but it would also help them connect to other groups where they would find that success, as you mentioned. I have a lot of groups that send me, hey, I found this grant, and then I share it with the rest of them. So being that kind of controller for a lot of the information, but we talked about the community development fund strategy. Last year, a person that has the kind of strategic thinking that we're looking for would be able to condense that for our groups and help them further succeed.
No, can I just follow up with one thing too? On the volunteer end, one part that I don't think we do a good job of, and this is all municipalities, is incorporating our volunteer groups into emergency response. So there's a lot of times when there's a pile of people to feed, there's a lot of things going on, there's food deliveries and things like this that need to be done. And if you have a good volunteer group but you have to be in a position that you can take advantage of, not take advantage of them, but you have to, because when volunteers show up to do something and they're like, nah, we got this, go home. Man, are they upset. And, in order to build that community, that's where that has to revolve around. And I think we need to integrate better with that. So I'm hoping that we will do this, and there might be a recommendation coming out of another board that I'm sitting on with RMA to that effect. So hopefully we'll see something. But I just wanted to touch on that because I really do think that a solid volunteer group that you've got to rely on needs to be engaged when they can too. So.
Councilor Prestidge?
Through the chair to council and administration. I think if we could have somebody that could come to board meetings and explain how to draw in more volunteers and board members would be incredible. Like with the Blue Ridge Community League, it's the same 6 to 8 people that come once a month. If there's something needs to be done, it's the same 6 or 8 people that do it. And everybody seems like they want the stuff done, but nobody will volunteer to help. So if there's a way to encourage these people with somebody that knows what they're doing, it would be incredible. For instance, when the brigade went through that Blue Ridge Community League, fed close to 200 people, and it was the same 6 or 8 people that did it. So to keep these community groups alive, we have to do something.
Last one, Councilor Wilhelm, and then
So with regards to that, like when we talk about staging, I liked you'd kind of mentioned an interesting idea, maybe this will come up later on, with regards to looking at that planner role as a seasonal job to start and then see what kind of benefits we get out of it from there that could turn into a potential full-time position. And on the recreational side, we've talked about this many times, community services, we have a lot of assets in Woodlands County that are underutilized right now or under cared for. And then we have some assets that need to be developed. And I think that as we move on past this next year and into the year afterwards with the new council, I'm hoping we get and we do our strategic planning again. I think that's a good focus that comes out of the new strategic plan, is making sure, taking our natural assets that we have and then starting to develop them more, because I think that's going to draw people into our municipality.
okay, any closing remarks, Sir Heather? With that, we're at 1:45 here, so we'll call it at that point. I guess we'll continue later on with cemeteries, but if I can get a motion to adjourn, Councillor Wilhelm.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councillor. Call the question in favor. And that's carried. And we'll